5 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started, and I'll call the meeting to order. And we're going to review our agenda items for Thursday's meeting at Longest Elementary at 5:30. We'll start off with the meeting minutes. Is there anything that anyone sees that needs to be discussed?
Last month at our work session on the Monday night, there were only 3 board members present, and also our finance officer was absent. Can we add, Sherry, will you add that our finance officer was absent at that meeting? Please, ma'am.
We usually record just the ones in attendance, but
Oh,
if you
okay.
want to start doing both, I can.
Well, I just think it's misleading that, you think that if you had a finance question, your finance officer was not in attendance until the meeting on Thursday. So I just was trying to make sure that was clarified. Thank you.
Is there anything else? All right, if not, we'll move on down to the treasurer's report.
There was nothing significant this month.
Okay. Everybody's had a chance to review all of that. If there's nothing on the treasurer's report, we'll go down to questions or comments on bills and salaries.
The board bills this month are quite small. They're 171,000. The only significant bills was a software purchase and a textbook purchase. So.
Okay, school financials, school bills.
Again, nothing out of the ordinary on any of them.
There's nothing on that. We'll go on down to the superintendent report.
Chairman Rager, I have really the only thing for tonight will be Grayson Wells and Kim Meadows. We're going to speak a little bit about their progress and where they are with potential daycare at South Elementary.
Okay, several months ago we started looking at the need for a daycare at South Elementary. It's been an ongoing need for several years. Molly and Kim talk about the process that we've gone through thus far, and we are to the point to where we're going to have a meeting next Monday night at 5:30 for the public to come in. We're going to talk about pre-registration and things of that nature to see what kind of numbers we're going to get before we start hiring personnel. Right now, if we have a full load, we would need 4 people hired. We don't know what our needs are because we don't have pre-registration numbers in yet. So that's kind of where we are at this point. Kim, if you don't care, just go ahead and tell them where we are.
You all know we have to do a needs assessment every 2 years for Family Resource Center, and this has come up before, but this year there was a huge interest, so I did a survey through SurveyMonkey, and we had 99 respondents. There were 50 who indicated they needed full-time child care, 53 indicated that they needed child care after school. So even if we looked at just half of those numbers, because as I've said to Mr. Davis and Mr. Blitzinger, where the rubber meets the road is how many are going to be willing to actually pay that $100 a week or to pay for the preschool, play school portion of it. So that's why we're at the process of having the meeting to see how many we get pre-registered. But even if we only did half of what is indicated, then it would be, actually, we would have more students enrolled there than they do at the 2 current child care centers at Longest and at Central City. As you all probably know, there are no child care, there are no registered daycares in the South Elementary School District. There are only a couple in the entire district. But in our school district specifically, there is just not any child care. There are a couple of individual providers that I refer people to because I feel confident enough that I would leave my child with them. But they're full. I mean, they go over their limit every year of how many kids they're supposed to keep without a license. So their New Paradise Preschool is closing, so that's gonna open up an even bigger need. Beachmont Baptist Church they did a preschool component this past year with the help of the Martin Foundation and the SOAR. They have 18 students pre-registered for the fall. They want to close that program and send those kids to South Elementary. So, I mean, we have more than enough, we know. We just haven't done the pre-registration, and we want to get us just a small deposit from them to hold the spot. And some people have asked why we didn't have the child care move from Hughes Kirk to South Elementary, just the background on that. It was very successful. But when we moved into the building at South Elementary, we did not have enough room for an all-day childcare. The state would not allow us to build room for daycare services. So we couldn't keep the all-day childcare open. The after-school program on its own did not make enough money to support that. So the decision was made to close it. Every year, I'm asked over and over why we don't open a daycare. This is the first time that I have felt confident enough that it will support itself. And I think I've done figures according, Mr. Bletzinger sent me a form to plug in numbers on how many students we have, what the fees are, how we would come out. And even if we have a minimal number of students, it would support itself. And I have all of that information, and if any of you would like to see it, I can email it to you. I have the entire proposal. The other part of that is that we talked to Mr. Davis and Mr. Bletzinger about writing a grant to the Martin Foundation, which I have done. We met with them 2 weeks ago, and they are all for it. Of course, it has to officially go before their board, but Alyssa Manning and Vicki Yantz both met with us, and they are fully supportive of it. And we're only asking for a one-time grant. We're not asking them to sustain the program. We just need startup costs so that we're covering any materials that we have to purchase to get started, and then salaries for the first month, so that we're not having to borrow money from the board and then turn around and pay that back.
So,
If you all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
so our enrollment has dropped over the last several years to where we've got a pod that's empty, and we could house the daycare in 2 classrooms in that pod.
And the concern is to make it self-sustaining, because it has to be something that's standalone. And I could remember we had trouble. We weren't able to sustain it, but I know they've done a lot of legwork, a lot of figuring to try to do this right, to make sure it's set up, and once it goes, it's going to go. So it certainly feels that way now. I think there's a need there, and kind of waiting on a couple of things before there's any action here. But they wanted to come and just kind of let everyone know the direction they're moving, and kind of a status update.
And we intend to tell the parents when we have our informational meeting and pre-registration that, we're all in, we're ready to do it, but they have to be committed to it as well. And we intend to tell them that, this is conditional on that we keep a good enrollment and it can sustain itself, that we cannot open something that is not going to sustain itself. But I feel very strongly that it's going to support itself.
How about June and July?
Our plan is to try to get things going.
July or August, yeah.
July, August, yes.
Yeah, because we'll have to go through getting everything approved, which Debbie Ingram, who was our daycare director at Hughes Kirk, she has volunteered. She's retired. She retired from the school system. She has volunteered to help us go through the process to be licensed. And she had a child care in her home that both of my kids went to. She was open for 20 plus years, Joe. Yeah, over 20 years. She actually is operating the program at Beachmont Baptist and works with Vicki and SOAR to do the books and cream in the summer. So she's willing to help us get all of that started so that we're not having to wait till we hire somebody.
And I think it should be noted that, it's not like Mr. Wells or Ms. Meadows are going to gain anything financially out of this at all. All they're going to gain is extra work and extra headaches, but they're trying to do it for the community and for the kids, and I think that should be recognized.
I know Central City went through this a couple of years ago, and I know I advocated pretty hard for them to keep that open because I know how hard it is. I have friends that own daycares in this county and I talked to each one of them and it's a really good thing that we have extra if our schools can afford to do it, and it's a big help to a lot of parents, I know, so.
Thank you for all the due diligence you've already done.
Can I ask, any word on why New Paradise is closing? My impression is there's always a wait list.
Yes,
These
there
church
is, and
preschools,
they have
and
a wait
so-
list right now,
But-
but, what is the teacher's name? It's not
Are they
Ashley,
just-
her sister, Lindsay Benton. Lindsay has decided to stay at home with her kids, and so and I've not heard this directly, Debbie Ingram was the one that told me that Lindsay has decided to stay home with her kids, she homeschools her children, and, so.
It's a personnel
They just don't, it
issue?
is personnel, they just don't think they're gonna go through, trying to hire somebody else and all that.
So what will the hours be, or what do you anticipate your hours for the daycare?
We're anticipating 6:30 in the morning
Okay.
to 6 in the evening.
Okay.
That's what longest is open currently.
Okay.
And I think we would be in about the same situation as them. That's something else that we'll know more when we have an informational meeting to see what time do parents need
Okay,
someone to be there.
thank you. And that meeting is Monday night?
Yes.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, is that all? Alrighty, down to personnel actions. Are there any questions for that? If not, we'll go on to the attendance and enrollment report. Any questions for Mr. Freeman regarding the enrollment report and attendance?
Yes, ma'am, we had the 8th month ended the 24th, had a pretty good month. About 7/10 for the month, and still up a little bit for the year. Enrollment was about the same from the previous month, so I'll go into more detail on that, but I think we were down 3 kids from the previous month, so pretty much about the same.
Alright, any questions? Alright, if not, we'll move on to the consideration for Martin Hall 18-19 season contracts and budgets. Mr. Mooneyham?
Good evening. Also have Advisory Council Chair Freddie Mays with us here this evening. The question about contracts came about in looking at previous contracts from previous years, since this is my first full season going into the fall. Some of the contracts previously have been signed by Mr. Provost, some have been signed in previous seasons by Mr. McCarty, or a combination of the two. And so I sent that to Mr. Davis just to clarify how we wanted to handle that going forward. He referred that to Mr. Bletzinger as well. And so that was just to get clarification on how we wanted to do that. If Mr. Davis could sign it with the board's approval or some combination of the two of us, or what you all wanted to do on that.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Alrighty.
In terms of the season and budget, information is laid out fairly self-explanatory there. We are still in negotiations or discussions for a show around Valentine's Day of 2019. That's the one performance that's being determined. That's listed there. We've got a budget up to a $15,000 show plus our production and marketing costs that go into that. That's all included in the season expenses. But still, the other 4 shows we haven't signed contracts yet, but we have those dates reserved with the booking agents and we're ready to go on those. With y'all's approval. Just trying to get the 5th show of the season locked down.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next item is to consider bidding DOT physicals for the 18-19 school year. Ms. Browning, just routine.
That's just a routine, we do this every year. And if this is approved and we can bid these out, we'll advertise it for a couple of weeks, like we normally do in the paper. And receive those bids and bid those.
Go down to consider creating 2 part-time teaching positions at the Renaissance Center, a math position and a science position, each position to be 3 days per week.
I'm here if anybody has any questions. We've had these 2 positions for the last 3 years. Those guys come 3 days a week. One is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The other is Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Fridays, they switch. One teaches and the other pulls students out, works with them one-on-one or in small groups if they're behind. I can't explain to you all how important those 2 guys are to our kids. So most of our students are behind, usually in math, a lot of times science too, when they come to us. And they do a great job in catching them back up before they go back to the high school or helping them get their credits. Also our MOVE students, MOVE program students utilize those guys too. And from the time they come in our door to they leave, they're working with somebody, either a class or a small group or a student one-on-one. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on down to consider purchase of a maintenance van.
Thank you, Sharon Rager. Basically, this is, the maintenance department is in need of a new maintenance van. Their current one has about 181,000 miles on it. They need something that has some towing capability, so we did get three bids. 2 of them are 6-cylinder engines, and the other one is a 8-cylinder Chevy engine that the the bus garage has a familiarity with, and so they're recommending that we go with that van. I found unused funds in the current year budget that would cover the cost. I found about $29,000, and again, the cost about $26,000.
The unused funds, was that from maintenance?
Yes,
part
ma'am.
of the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we currently do not have a truck that has towing capacity? And we've been able to survive all these years?
I mean, they have a vehicle that has towing capacity, but the reason why, we're just saying that the new purchase of this van, should they need to tow something with the 8-cylinder is going to be a better towing vehicle if they need to do that at any time. Also, the 6-cylinder vehicles, correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, but they're turboed vehicles, which usually are a little bit more difficult on maintenance, so a little more costly if something happens to them. So this is a straight 8-cylinder, 350 engine. I mean, it's a common vehicle.
Where is this Bachman out of? Where are they located? Or
We're all out of Louisville, I believe. Now, Paul Ford's out of Lexington, Bachman.
These are all bid
They're out of
lists.
Louisville.
I think it's either Lexington or Louisville.
I just didn't know if our local.
Bachman's in Louisville.
Okay.
This is my chamber coming out in me. I didn't know if we had local people that could help us with this.
These come off the state bid contract. So, we called over there. I never got any response from them.
Okay.
We give them the opportunity.
Okay, that's all that matters.
That's right. They may say something, but I called.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else? We'll go down to the next item, to consider approving school activity principals combining budget for fiscal year 19.
Thank you again. This is something that basically Ms. LaBelle actually brought to our attention, that none of my classes or anything had given me any warning about this, but this is each year the school district, the Board of Education is to approve the school activity fund budgets. So,
Wow. So you can assume it's never been done till this month or this year?
not to my
Or,
knowledge.
or for the next year, 18-19. So,
Yes, not to my knowledge, Mr. Ball.
so what did I say that made it to your attention?
You had asked me about it last year, and I had, again, like I've never been, none of my mentors or any of my peers had ever, it's not in our financial calendars that the KDE puts out.
Okay.
It's an obscure sentence that's in the Red Book, and I did not, that I hadn't seen prior. We've been through Red Book training, and the trainers never made mention of that, so.
So when it says school activity, is that the same as your site-based
No.
budget? So that's
No.
separate?
School activity funds are the ones that are governed by Red Book. Those are the ones that are locally managed.
Beta.
Site-based council money is the funds that the board approves the allocation per
Right.
student.
Right.
And that's housed at the board, and that's what that is.
Yeah. Now, are we supposed to see a site-based budget just because? Or,
I mean, you can look at them, and there's no necessarily approving those.
but there's never been attached to a meeting or anything, correct?
Okay.
Is there any questions regarding that? Okay, if not, we'll go down to the 18-19 salary schedule. You again.
Yep. This year, we're recommending to the board that 2.5% increase is applied across the board. I've included a salary schedule changes summary in with your packet. There's a 2.5% increase that's applied and it goes through each page. The classified miscellaneous salary schedule, we did move an occupational therapy assistant to the classified hourly pay scale. We also removed a speech and disability assistant that no one was receiving, so anytime we can do any cleanup, we're going to do that. On the extra service salary schedule, we removed the agricultural stipend. However, we had to leave the extended days portion on because that needs to be on the salary schedule. We removed National Board Certified Coordinator as no one was receiving that one. The classified monthly pay scale, again, 2.5% was increased. The classified hourly pay scale, the 2.5% increase was applied. Program specialist was added in category 2. And then we placed that occupational therapy assistant from the other page into category 11. And then page 6, interpreter sign language, again, 2.5% increase. Longevity schedule, there was no change done, and substitute teachers, a 2.5% increase was applied.
Okay, so elaborate on longevity. It says no change. This is something that, is always kind of overlooked, but who gets longevity pay?
Principals and coaches,
All coaches?
not all coaches.
Not all coaches? So how do we decide which coaches get it?
Oh,
Because they already get their base pay.
Right.
And they get their stipend, right?
that's correct.
And then they get they get this over here, longevity, so.
That's correct. So, per the salary schedule,
Uh-huh.
high school head boys and girls basketball receives that, and then high school head football coach receives that.
Okay, so just those.
Just those.
So
And the band director and associate head director for band.
high school band
Yes, ma'am.
director and associate director?
Correct.
I don't know, does it say it on here?
You're looking at the sub-schedule.
Does it say,
It's the one previous to that.
does it say specifics?
It does.
Okay, so if we hired a new band director, that's not what we're doing, but if we hired a new band director at the high school, would they be candidates for longevity pay?
Not right now, because effective July 1st, 2015, longevity was frozen.
Okay.
So no one
Okay.
new has been added.
No one knew, but if someone's been there for a while, they still get it, correct?
But if they had it in place on July 1st, on June 30th, 2015,
Uh-huh,
they kept what they had.
okay. So there could be a principal and assistant principal in a building that one gets it and one doesn't, correct?
That is correct, based on when it was frozen.
And years of service.
I just feel like there's always, it's like the rich getting richer. Because, I know we're going to give the classified staff a raise, but before the cuts in 14, which went into effect 15-16 school year, they were already across the state lower. Is this correct? If you had to rank them, we're talking the bus drivers, the custodians, cafeteria workers, the classified staff.
It varied.
What were we ranking? They were lower than.
That I couldn't tell you specifically what exact rank they were at that time.
And the 2 versus 2.5%, this is one of the things we discussed when most of you came in and talked with us. The 2%, make sure I say this right, Eric, the 2% would get folks back to slightly below where they were in 2015, assuming that they took the pay cut then and got the 2% mandated by the state. Okay, so that's exactly where they would have been, without. The 2% gets them close to that. The 2.5% gets everyone slightly above that. And I know in speaking with you folks and the emails I've sent since, I think the consensus was, we think, that that's what you want to do, is to get folks, not just where they were, but maybe slightly above. And we're talking fractionally. It's not a lot. And so if you look at it in the long view, out of about 4 years, they're going to get maybe 0.1% raise. But this does get them back to where folks were. And I want to say, first, I appreciate y'all thinking that way, because I know it's been a big deal for y'all for a while to get folks back to where they were. And I want to thank, and I'll try to do this again Thursday night, I need to say this, I think folks have been very patient with that, at least this year, because the pension and the budget, how that came through on Frankfurt changed things. If the original pension proposal that was offered by Governor Bevin in, I think, September, seems like 5 years ago, had that gone through, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The district would probably be out over $2 million a year more than they are right now. So the fact that it's ended up much better than it was at the beginning allows this to happen. And that's one of those things we discussed as we went through budget items. And as we talk budget, these are so tied together, we can talk some pluses and minuses too, that I've got written down, you'll have on your sheet, as we go and try to kind of explain how the pension and budget, how that's finally ended, some pluses and minuses to the district. There's also pluses and minuses to individual people. Classified folks a little differently than certified folks. So all those things, Eric and I are trying to go around to schools again and explain to them, because people are still nervous, and how does it affect me? And I will say this, because of the diligence of a lot of folks and kind of standing up and hopefully in the right way, it's much, much better on the district and on individuals than it would have been. So I appreciate our employees' patience. It hasn't been like I've been getting emails every day. They've kind of, I think, trusted the board and trusted us, and we feel like we're in a position to do this, and I'm very happy to be able to recommend this.
Well, I think initially when the pay cuts took place, you know, I know that was my first school board meeting, having to come on and cut everybody's pay 10%. That was probably the worst thing I ever had to do in my life. Cause I've been through it myself and I knew, you know, how it felt. But in saying that, you know, I made the comment that I strive to look for ways that we could make things work. Eric's worked really hard. You know, and I'm glad that we can sit here today and talk about giving a 2.5% raise as well. I know that means a lot to you all. It would me too. I'm still trying to get my $11,000 a year, you know, pay cut back, but I have a ways to go. So I know how it feels, and I you know, everyone's worked really hard. This seems like it's been probably the best year. Talking to staff, students, teachers, bus drivers, you know, anyone in the district, I feel like this past year has gone really well. And I do think we've kind of turned the corner. I feel like we have, you know, with gaining trust from you all in the community. And that's important to us sitting up here. You know, we're up here to do the right thing. That's what we're supposed to do. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do. And we'd love to give you like 10%, but you know, it's not in the cards right now. But I think, you know, 2.5% is us, you know, letting you all know. I mean, we value you all as employees. We know you work hard. You've got a lot of responsibilities, and you know, to me, you know, when you do your job and do it well, and you take pride in your job, you know, there has to be a reward somewhere. And although it's not really a reward because we're just giving back what we took, it's still a reward because you keep working hard, hoping that this will happen. So hopefully Thursday everybody will vote together.
And Chairman Rigg, I have to say, it's been I say uniquely, it's my first round, so everything's unique to me. But I think for folks, it's been a uniquely difficult year in the stress of this pension thing. The budget somewhat towards the end, but the pension thing is, there's been times it's ebbed and it's flowed, and it seemed like it never ended. And there were times where folks really had to consider, am I going to have to retire? Or I'm going to take a huge hit, and then it would get a little better, and then it wouldn't, then it would, and it's been a constant stressor. And so I think the dust has finally settled, and in ways that, you know, there are things we're going to talk about in the budget that still we're taking a hit on, or are a definite concern, but much better than it would have been, and I'm glad for folks that principals, you talk about administrators' longevity, we can go back and forth on how that was implemented, and at the time there was I will say this, and I'm not ashamed to say it, longevity is like a bad word, and I get it, but you know what? There's some reason for that too, because at the time it was implemented, I was a principal, and in particular, the administrators in Muhlenberg and teachers, I guess the best way to describe it, there was a smaller gap just about in Muhlenberg than any district in the state of Kentucky between being a teacher and being an administrator. And not that you don't value teachers, but I don't think it's shameful to say we value our administrators as well. And this year has been brutal for them, and keeping the folks together, and don't worry about this, and then is there going to be a walkout, and it's just, there's been so many things, and I'm very proud of our administrators. They have kept the professionalism up. Their folks, I think, appreciate them and recognize that they do. I'm not ashamed to say our administrators deserve the money they're getting. It's a difficult job. It's a round-the-clock job. It's a weekend job. And so, you know, there's a reason that came about, but we would like to get away from it. Eventually, where we can maybe get to a multiplier kind of thing, we're definitely going to look at that and try to make something. I want everybody I'm saying this as upfront as I can. No hidden, no anything, because you don't want to say longevity now because you feel like you're going to get blasted for it. It's not ideal, but it wasn't there to give Robbie Davis more money. It was, hey, administrators need to get them back to where other administrators are. And we weren't there. And we were losing folks, and the thought of losing folks. So that's kind of how it started, and now it's morphed into it's evil, and that's just the feel. I get it, and we want to get away from that. So, I want to acknowledge that a little bit, and I did when y'all came in to just say, let's just talk about it. So that's kind of where we are there, but I say over and over, been a difficult year on some of that, but I'm so appreciative of our employees that I just haven't been blown up with emails, are we getting our money back? Matter of fact, I don't know that I've had one. And it really helped, I think, when Eric and I were able to go by earlier in the year and talk about the pension with the staffs, and we just talked about it. We knew that was the intent here. But if we get hit, worst case scenario, we can't do it. And I think they took us at our word, and it's just fantastic now that we're able to make that, ultimately it's your decision, but that we can make that recommendation, so.
And I agree with what Chairman Rager said, and appreciate all the communication that you all have done to make it clear cut for the staff, and with the safety issues going on this year and the pension on top of everything else. I just think it's a different atmosphere than it was a year ago.
I'm glad you said that, because the safety thing is the thing as I'm talking about the teachers and the principals, and actually classify everybody. That was a tough time. And that is, as we talk about budget, that's going to be one of the concerns, because we're spending some money to try to make things better. So that's one of the concerns. But that was a really difficult time too, as we had to deal with threats and the potential of this. And it was a tricky time, and especially to be an administrator at that point and try to make sure we communicated things well and reassured people and took it seriously. And that was an added stressor for a while, and obviously it's still there, but we do feel like we're moving forward on that. And I'll talk more about that Thursday night in the general board meeting.
Well, I think my question was, I'm almost positive the classified staff has been paid in previous years lower than the average of the state. But, they can't get a bonus. They can't get extra service pay. Is this right, Ms. Cooper? I mean, so I would my thought is, wouldn't it be great if, you could go to your folks and say, you know what, the board's going to give the classified staff even more than 2.5%.
Are you going to?
No, I'm just saying, wouldn't that be great? But you've got to take it into perspective. It's like I said, the rich keep getting richer. You got the people that are already getting the base pay with extra service and also longevity, the admin people, and then you have your bus drivers and classified staff that are the ones that are, they're going to see a raise, yes, but they're not going to see as much as the admin people with all the other opportunities to have an increase in pay. So that's just, I'm just saying, when you look at that, and Spencer County did this 2 years ago. What Spencer County did is they in their meeting, they gave the opportunity to give classified staff and teachers the raise and not the admin people, only because they already get stipends and they get the extra service pay. So I'm just saying, it goes on and it can be done, but that's not something that's being brought to the board. But that's my thought, because I've seen somewhere where Muhlenberg County, that their classified staff was at a certain level, maybe above half. Their certified staff was, but their classified staff was below the average of the state. So I think that came from KEA's website.
And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. I love my classified people. But when my ladies go home at 3 o'clock, they're done for the day. Being an administrator, I'm on call 24 hours a day. So if something breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jimmy phones out, so he's up. He's calling me, so I'm out. I'm calling the superintendent. These are all administrators. I'm not calling my cooks to say, I need you to come out at 3 o'clock in the morning to fix something.
I understand, but when we cut pay,
I'm classified.
when we cut pay, we cut more into theirs than we did the ones that were already receiving stipends, because we didn't cut stipends. We didn't cut extra service pay. We cut base pay. So your bus drivers and your custodians and all the classified staff took a bigger hit. Is this right? Is that right?
Well, and technically, right now,
Yes, I mean,
technically the folks that are receiving a stipend are actually receiving less than a 2.5% raise, because the stipends.
But before, when we made the cuts.
And stipends in the past had never received raises.
But in the past, when we cut the base pay for the year 15-16.
That was correct, and you are correct in that statement.
Thank you.
And I will also like to make another clarification, is that there are classified people that are receiving stipends. There are some that receive coaching stipends. There are some that receive, there's our parent involvement liaison is a classified person. So I mean, there's opportunities. It is not strictly a certified, classified delineation line that's written in the sand for that. So there are opportunities there for those folks as well.
I'm just saying, when they were cut greater because they didn't have a stipend and extra service pay to go to help offset a loss of base pay.
and you
Because their
are-
base pay, everyone's base pay was cut.
And you are correct in saying that, but it has to be said, and I hate going here because this is the division stuff that I'm trying to avoid so much. But it also is true that every time there was a raise given, whenever, back in the day, there used to be raises given a while back, that was never on longevity, that was never on stipends, that was never on anything either. So the case could have been argued then that the folks without that were getting a bigger raise. So it goes both ways. The 1 year it went back, that's true. Every other year that it happened to go up, the opposite of that was true. So I get that, and I certainly don't want to come off, and I don't think anybody feels that way, that we don't value our classified folks.
That's not what I said.
I understand that, but it's
Thank you.
important for me
Yeah.
to clarify that, because we do. They're grossly underpaid as well, and we understand that. We feel, is that we all are. And a fair thing to do, and our recommendation to you folks, and again, we talked about this when most of you came in, would be 2.5% across the board. That's, we're a team, and some get more than others, and I get that, and that's the way, it's always been, and that's not demeaning our cooks and our bus drivers. They're fantastic, and we say it all the time. I understand your point, but our recommendation is the 2.5%, because this would not be on longevity, and this would not be on stipends as well. So that should be said as well.
So why did we freeze longevity pay? Why is it important to freeze it? Like, if it's such a good thing, why are certain people are getting it and some people aren't? Like, why is it frozen?
That was the board's prerogative at that time.
Can I answer that question?
Oh, sure.
We froze it because we didn't have the money to pay it.
But people were still getting it.
They
People
were
still
getting it, but they didn't get any more. That we froze it right where it was at.
Right.
Because we didn't have the money to pay it anymore. I mean.
But they were still getting paid. They just
They were
weren't
getting
going.
that pay, but that's where it stopped at.
Yeah, but the longevity pay was still being paid.
The
So,
longevity pay was being paid, but nobody got it after that date. That was when it was capped right there.
It wasn't taken away from people.
We didn't take it away, but we capped it right there.
right. So if someone for 5 to 9 years of service gets an additional $2,000, then when it was frozen and they are still employed with us at year 10, they don't go to the next $2,000 to
If
get
they had
4.
9 years, that's where it stopped. They didn't get,
Right,
when
I
they got their
understand.
10 years, it didn't go up.
But that's what I'm saying is, it's good enough to pay certain people get it, but it's not good enough to make it always go away. You understand what I'm saying? It's okay
Well,
that,
if you want it all to go away, then you
the frozen is
put in.
misleading because some people are still getting it.
Yeah, everybody that was getting it is still getting it. But it didn't go up any. It capped at 9 years. If they were at 4 years, it was capped at 4 years.
But I'm just saying it's misleading because even
That's
though it
nothing
says,
misleading about that. All you have to do is look at it. Look at the chart. If they had 4 years, they didn't get it for 5 years. The next year, when they got their 5 years, they didn't get the longevity pay.
But
If
we
they had
don't know
9 years,
who's
they didn't get it when they got 10.
yeah. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying,
think somebody's getting it still?
well, sure. Can you answer that? Did you hear his question? Can you answer that?
She thinks people are still getting it.
People
Yeah,
prior
There are people.
to,
Yeah, the
there are
people who
people
are-
getting that
There are
prior to
people-
when it was
The people that were
frozen.
getting it
Anybody that
before are
met
getting it
those marks,
now, but it did
0
not
to
go
5,
up.
9, 10 to
People are still
whatever.
getting it. And we can have a new principal hired next week and they would not qualify to get it.
That's
At
right.
least 5 years.
Unless we unfreeze it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
So it's just kind of,
But if you want to do away with it, go to a multiplier, just like some of the surrounding counties have
I'm
done.
just wondering why it was so important to freeze it, to let certain people
Well,
still
we froze
receive
it because we didn't have the money to up it any. I mean, that's when we cut salaries.
And if you'd taken it away, those folks would have taken a 10% plus another.
I think this topic was last year at the Greenville Elementary School.
Yes, it's always every year.
At Greenville
Yeah, I usually talk about it.
No, just,
Yeah, and it's worth talking about. Well, I want
think
to be
it's
out and
important.
open.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, and I've said my piece, and right or wrong, you can agree or disagree, we will recommend 2.5% across the board.
Right, but that's separate from longevity pay. That's a base pay. 2.5% is base pay that we're increasing.
Right.
I understand that, but I'm talking about the longevity pay, where there's a small group is still getting it.
Okay. Alright, so we're gonna go on to the tentative budget.
Thank you again, Chairman Rager. This is the second portion of the budgeting process. If you recall, I'll go through this every time, but in January, we did a draft budget, which basically does the framework for the budget. The tentative budget is when we start putting in Fund 2 amounts. Unfortunately, we do not have all the state hasn't released the exact amounts for the Fund 2, so what we do is we put in the previous year's numbers in terms of revenues and a one line item expenditure, just to make it balance. Once we receive those grant notices, we'll start plugging that in. People will start building their budgets. That'll come in your working budget. That'll tell you, exactly how much is in salary, how much is in benefits, general supplies, whatever the case may be for that. What I've done is you'll have there's a tentative budget general fund summary page that's there. I've also, this time I've included the PowerPoint that's in there. However, I did a fiscal year 2019 tentative budget at a glance sheet, which really just kind of has all the numbers from, that's that second page right there. It has all the numbers from the slides, just so you can kind of just look at it without having to flip through the slides, essentially. Again, it has the revenue line item changes that we've put in there. We have the property tax item that's still in there. That's not something that is voted on until about August, September. It's in there. It can easily be removed, whatever the board's prerogative is at that time. We decreased SEEK funding by about 3.45% with a 4% predicted ADA reduction to average daily attendance. The predicted number that I had in my model was about 18.82 million, and we received 18.93 million. So we're pretty close on our predictions. So I think I feel good about the numbers that I bring to you. I adjusted the on behalf amounts. Those are basically the non-cash item that we receive. The state pays benefits on our behalf. We have to record it per the GASB rules that say, you receive this benefit, and it's a revenue and an expense at the same exact amount. They zero each other out. Expenses, we've listed those items out. I'll also put the expense line item changes in there. Again, we increased salary expense by 2.5%. And again, finalized values, just if that, again, it's the board's prerogative as to when the salary schedule is passed. If it's passed as is, the numbers stand. If it's passed with a different recommendation, then I'll have to go back and change the numbers, and we'll have to do a called meeting to get those fixed. I budgeted $200,000 to vehicles and transportation just to kind of keep us on that same schedule. I've allocated funds. This was in the draft budget. I allocated funds for security cameras for South Middle and East Campus. And then I increased the security services line items by $62,000 to account for a SRO, and then to also pay for doors and some of the other various items that we've just looked at this year the expenses will hit in fiscal year 19.
Did you look at all the schools?
Well, I think we're looking at as many as we can as we move along. And I think Mr. Davis will expand on that a little bit further.
That's fine. I just wanted to know.
Like front entrances, I'll allude to what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah,
we can talk as much as you want. But Craig Thomas, we had an architect came and was willing to come and kind of go through the schools, the front entrances aren't what they should be, where you don't have to buzz in twice and then be buzzed into the school. And that's east, west, south middle, north middle, and longest are the ones that we visited those and kind of went through with a plan in each one and what would it take, and he's working on that. So we went to the schools, in that case, where the entrances were not where they needed to be. So the others are pretty good. So in some cases, we kind of, certain schools, but it's the schools that needed it. And again, I'll go into a little bit more about that, like the gym doors, high school gym doors, they need it worse than the others. So I'll hit that a little more in depth, but as needed is what we're kind of doing, starting with high school, because as safety goes, high school, middle school, that's where the most problems typically are. So we really are going through those a little more quickly. I will say this, good news, and I'll talk about it again Thursday, the panic buttons that we've talked about for a while, they have been installed at East and West, and now we're in the getting ready to test them phase, and where ideally they hit this panic button and it calls 911 and also sets off a tone which tells the kids to go to lockdown. And if this works like we hope, then we'll add it to all the schools. But they haven't been tested yet, just got in. Is that right, Chad? And so that's positive.
So the security cameras, are we ending up with up-to-date ones at every school?
I don't, go ahead.
Well, and Matt can
jump in.
Can explain this a little better, but we don't do them all at once. So that way, as the technology evolves, you're kind of replacing the ones on a cycle. That way, you don't have
all the old ones at one
right.
time.
You don't replace them all, and then 2 years later they're all outdated. So if you do a couple of schools at a time, then as it cycles through, then you can update one of the older camera systems and then get them up to date, and it kind of cycles through. And it's a good budgeting thing as well, because you're not doing that one financial hit in 1 year and then really having to do something again, like in the next couple of years or something that may adversely affect the budget.
We are trying to accelerate it a bit. Maybe instead of one school, maybe get 2 to 3. Matt, is that fair to say, with some, say, schools' money and some of ours as well?
Each school's a little different. Some of them are harder to do than others, depending on what they've already got, firewalls, existing wiring that you can use, or if you have to rip out all the wiring and start all over again. So we're doing just like you're hearing, a schedule to get them in there. But I feel good about it. We're making good progress.
So with the tentative budget, the revenue line item changes for revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So you are proposing to have a property tax increase. Is that what you're proposing?
That was what was
The
on
compensating rate plus 4%?
Well, it's either the compensating rate or the 4%. And really, it's not necessarily, it doesn't translate into 4%. All that is
I understand. I'm just saying that's what you're gonna,
That was per the plan that I'd laid out about 2 years ago. Again.
but we've received more from TVA. We got 7.1 million this year. And we're on a decrease of enrollment, so we don't need as much to operate with.
We did not receive 7.1 million. We received about 6.8 million this year.
So there's a decrease in the enrollment, correct?
That's correct.
But now, the General Assembly budgeted to increase SEEK per student, right?
Correct.
That starts July 1.
Correct.
And then there's also increase in transportation, part of the SEEK fund. Is
No,
this correct?
it remains the level.
It remains at the level, yeah. And
which is much better than
Well,
we
is there
are.
increase in anything else for the General Assembly? Because I know that,
Not necessarily.
I know that the SEEK increased,
The SEEK increased $19 per student.
okay?
Which, it roughly translates into about $85,000 for us.
Which is wonderful, per student.
Well, $19 per student, yes, not $85,000 per student, so overall.
I mean, I thought you meant 8,500, okay.
No.
So, all right, so it's going to increase how much? 85?
Approximately 85,000 based on current numbers and current projections, so.
For the year.
Okay. But we are on a decreased enrollment.
And that's based on the decreased enrollment, so.
If I may, I'll jump in, and because I've been looking forward to this one. I'm gonna go. I've been waiting on this for a while, and even better numbers came in today. As we look at the budget, some pluses and minuses that we wanted to look at and say, hey, what's good and what's not, as we decide which way to go. The big one that I'm really proud to tell you, as of today or last week or recently, our sub costs are now down $138,000 from last year. So kudos to our staff, and that's best for kids, and so we're very happy there that we've dropped quite a bit. We'd love to drop more, we hope to, but that's a nice number. Student attendance is up some for the year. That's a plus. A little bit more SEEK funding there, and I will go right over to the negative, though, immediately, is because the declining enrollment more than offsets the positive in us going up. So that's a negative. The declining enrollment is something we're definitely bringing in less money from the state on that. Unmined coal, we just found this out. This is a good one from the legislators, is, our unmined coal value dropped dramatically here. It dropped more than dramatically in eastern Kentucky, and one of the bills that passed was to give a one-time, basically a bonus, however you want to look at it, to those folks. We did not know we were going to get in on that, and turns out we're going to get $90,000. So that's nice from legislation. We're happy
But we
with
don't
that.
have to pay that back?
Nope. And that's one time, but still, that's great. And just found that out. The double-edged sword is the CERS. We are thrilled that it's a phase-in, because had it not been a phase-in, had it hit us all at once, we were looking at about 600,000 or more starting next year, every year. The phase-in that was passed and then vetoed and then thankfully overridden, the phase-in is going to cost us, without the raise part, probably $110,000 to $120,000. Probably each year as it builds up over a 5 to 10 year period. I'll be honest with you, you watch 3 different webinars on this and you're going to get 3 different numbers. They're not all on the same page, but we do know this. The phase-in is a wonderful thing for us compared to all at once. If you want to look at the negative, the phase-in is still costing the district well over $100,000. So it's a double-edged sword, but I will say this, it could have been much worse. But that is a negative that's coming out of our budget next year, $100,000+ there. Our budget gained quite a bit of money this year. So we're building our contingency, and that's one thing that makes us think, hey, we can do this 2.5%. And so that's a positive, is that we gained even because of staffing. What happened a few years ago, staffing's still down, we're maintaining that. So that's a positive. The large contingency is a positive. We did commit a lot of funds to the potential HVAC units, which are negative. That's going to happen.
Almost $10 million.
Yeah, and we're waiting on numbers for that to get more accurate, to see if that has come down any.
That's huge.
May have gone the other way. The SEEK increase, as Ms. Laval talked about, that is a positive. The legislation put in $19 a student. It's about $85,000 for us. So that's another plus. On the negative side, safety costs we're going to be out some money. And that's going to happen. The HVAC units we talked about, no PD money next year, no textbook money, no K-tip money, which is new teacher training money. So all those things, and with PD money, we're just going to basically, it's not like we may be out more money, but we're going to be able to do less. So some things where we could send folks to a conference in Louisville or Lexington, we just may not be able to do that anymore, or it's going to come out of general fund dollars. We won't have PD money to do that. Textbooks, you're not going to be getting any more textbook orders for a while. No textbook money at all. And then
how about the schools which have a balance for textbooks?
Penny, do the schools really have much of a balance left?
Well, we have one school with balance left from the year before, where you can do a carryover. We've got one school there. There's several schools that have still a balance left. So if you see a plane go through, they're just spending their old money from here on out because they won't be getting it.
It won't be one of those deals where they can buy all the kids' textbooks. It's going to be more online stuff, and some of that's where we're going to have to go. And we've been through the textbook thing before, where we was frozen for a while. Yes. We'll survive it, but it's not ideal. That is.
Yeah, I think we had some that just kind of waited to see what the legislators were going to do, to see if they were going to get additional textbook money so that they could see if they could make a larger purchase.
But whoever has the funds can use it.
Yes. They just won't be able to buy a full school set of anything now. Nobody's going to have that much money. Those textbooks are really expensive.
Yes.
And K-tip, basically what we have now is we don't have anything in place, no money for new teachers to have mentors, or new principals to have mentors, and they're paid a little bit extra stipend to help them, and that's needed. That's a good thing. That's no longer going to be the case. So the district, we're going to have to figure out a plan to put in place because they still need those training wheels. They still need the help. We're just not going to have state help. So we're going to be out some money there, but don't know where that's going, but something's going to have to happen there. So those are some negatives that we'll have to overcome. But overall, this list, if I'd done this in September, we'd have maybe a positive or two, and then I'd have had a list of negatives I'd still be talking about. So it could be much worse, and we are moving in the right direction, and I do think this 2.5% is sustainable because that's a recurring cost. And we have to consider that. This isn't a one-time thing and, hey, we're okay. This is something that, Eric has said over and over, and, he's 100% right. We have to be able to sustain this going forward, but given everything that we've told you and what's in front of you, we're confident, as is our auditor, that we can do this.
So the 90,000 one-time boost, what are we anticipating using that for? Can we use that for textbooks?
We could. I mean, it's general fund dollars, so it could go for a lot of different things. But the crazy thing is, textbooks, I mean, if you talk about high school with textbooks, 90,000 is probably just half the price. I mean, it's crazy. At Bremen, I mean, just small school textbooks were what, 35,000 or 40,000?
We just spent on Jason, Mr. Wells, we just bought 30,000 almost.
They
Stacy
generally-
bought last year.
Yes, and they generally have to buy like for a few of the grades. They
Yeah,
can't
they were
buy
like 30s.
school-wide. They'll have to do like K-3 maybe 1 year and then hope for the best. And that's combining 2 sets of funds to get K through 3. It's just so expensive that they have trouble phasing in a whole program even.
Okay, so not on textbooks maybe. What else are we thinking about the 90,000? What are we gonna spend it on?
I mean, really, we looked at it to offset current expenses. I mean, so it's a good shot in the arm, really. I mean,
Safety, CRS, however you want to look at it.
Mentoring and teaching.
Possibly. I mean, really it's going to go into, it's like going into your checking account. You have so many expenses. There's a lot of different ways to use it. But we didn't know we were getting that. So that's fantastic. And we've been on the legislation quite a bit about some things we haven't been happy about. We're happy about that. I want to give them credit for that. That's, and I think some of the eastern Kentucky counties are getting significantly more than that. And I'm happy for them because they were, yeah.
It was $7 million allocated, and
we got 90,000.
How long you don't buy a bus?
So there was some that got 1.2 million.
I used a bus or something. Knowing that if you'll bring your vehicle again.
Okay. All right, anything else? If not, we'll go down to the board consent agenda to our leave of absence. There is one that we put down there for the lunchroom table surplus.
They're just really that one is the tables are in such disrepair that they can't. We don't feel comfortable selling them because
you can't sell those came from Bremen.
Well, I mean, it would hurt someone.
3 years ago. When did you have?
I ate at those tables.
And unfortunately, the state says we can't just take, even if it is, mangled, I still have to bring it to you to say, will you let us throw it away? And that's all that Central City is asking to do. So.
And Miss Jones has a happy item right there.
Good surprise.
Yes, nice.
$20,000 donation. Wow.
Our family resource.
Family resource.
About time your family resource will do something, I guess.
All right, facilities use, fundraising, and field trips. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? I'm sorry. We won't turn away donations of any kind. Ever. All right, if there's nothing else, then I need a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, I have a question. Last month, the email exchange changed for our school board email, and I was curious how y'all were notified.
By email. By email.
Well, I couldn't get into my email, so I couldn't get an email.
Well, I had an email that said that there was going to be an issue, and then it was after the fact that I still had an issue, but Brad fixed
But I was just wondering how you found out, because my last email was the Thursday that the board meeting was posted, and then I didn't receive any more emails. So up to our, what was it, April 19th meeting, I didn't have any emails, and some pertain to the meeting. And so then at the meeting is when I found out I wasn't able to access my email, and I'd missed meeting emails that pertain to the meeting. So I found out, that the exchange had changed then. So I was curious how y'all found out.
Was it when we came in to meet with you, or was it that?
I don't know, but what I did since then, I know Chad worked with you that night, but what I
I'm
did
just
since
curious how
then.
y'all found out, because I know that he's called me now with my password, but I'm just wondering how y'all found out, because there were emails that pertain to April's meeting that I didn't receive, and I wasn't aware, and you know how we have these Monday night work sessions, well, nothing was brought to the attention then. And so, no, I'm just saying I wasn't aware and I wasn't told, so now, I maybe didn't receive emails prior to the meeting, so I'm just curious how y'all were notified.
I'm thinking when we went in to meet with you, I'm thinking you mentioned it then.
I sent all of you a text. What I did is I sent out an email when I found out from Chad that, they had changed, is I sent out an email that said test email.
Okay.
Let me know. And then I sent all of you a text and said, please, and you didn't respond. I sent a text to each of you that said, please let me know if you receive this, because if I send you an email and you're not getting it, there's no way I can.
But that was before the 19th or after the 19th? That was after the 19th?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just saying, after the 19th, because on the day of the meeting is when I found out I couldn't access my emails. I got all my emails up until the 12th of April, so that whole week before the meeting, and there was a question on an email agenda item, and I didn't find out or get it until after the April meeting. So I was just wondering how y'all found out. Like, I found out at the meeting, so I was wondering how y'all found out that the email exchange was going to change.
When we came to the meeting, one-on-one meeting.
That's where I'm thinking you told us the email was getting messed up.
It's going to be changed or something.
Chad sent out several prior to that, I thought, district-wide. I assume you guys were in there because, I don't know.
It was a memo to everybody.
Was it after the 12th?
It was sent to all staff. Now, whether board members was in all staff group,
I thought we did get one with the board, with the
Was it
staff.
before the 12th?
Let me check.
The test email was on file
On May 4th, so that was after the April 12th. I'm just wondering.
Did you get the text, the test email that I sent out, or the text?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. But what I'm saying is, I found out in the meeting that I had missed emails, so.
I got it on April 30th.
April 30th?
Yeah.
Okay. But just to clarify, April 12th, when the board packet was released, I received that email. That coming Monday, of course, that was a Thursday, that coming Monday, in our work session for the month of April, there was no dialogue about, hey, the exchange is gonna change, it's already changed, whichever. And then I'm sitting in the meeting and I find out that the email had changed. And so there was an email that pertained to Thursday night's meeting and I did not receive that. And I was aware or made aware at the meeting. So I'm just wondering when y'all found out that
Same time, you probably got it too. You probably, your email.
May 4th, is that what you're saying, Stephanie?
When did you meet with us?
Well,
What week was
May
that?
4th was when we got the test email.
It was right before the last board meeting, wasn't it? In my mind, I remember you saying something about a problem with emails. That it was
Honestly,
gonna
I don't
change.
remember a lot about the emails.
But I can't.
I don't know. I really don't.
I don't have it on my calendar when I came.
Stephanie, are you able to find? You said May 4th?
May 4th is when we got the test email, but it was prior to that
After I read them, I delete them.
I've deleted a bunch too, so.
You log them.
With 5 emails, you have to delete some.
You don't know. You don't know when.
No, I'll have to look further into it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Eric, your photocopy is working?
Are you ready to adjourn?
I think Rajiv's ready to.
Rajiv's making a motion by
I'll second it.
gesture. Okay, motion by Mr. Dahar, second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor, adjourn and say aye. Aye. All opposed.